Good evening. My name is David Mandel, and I'm the director of the library's Center for Exhibits and Interpretation. The gallery you just saw was 5 years in the making, from concepting through design, curation, development, fabrication, and installation. It drew on the collections across the world's largest library, and the team included librarians, 3D and 2D designers, filmmakers, sound engineers, interactive designers, casework fabricators, a very generous lead donor, and a certain Librarian of Congress. If you have a moment, please do ask her about the case's Ferrari hinges. Exhibit making is a team sport, and this project was very fortunate to have a talented and dedicated team. Our work now is in the hands of the audience, and we hope you liked your early sneak peek of the gallery. Gallery's goal was to choreograph an experience which compellingly engages visitors with the library's collections. To achieve this goal, we worked to develop a synergy between the narrative and the design. Our inaugural show is Collecting Memories and is thematic in approach. It juxtaposes artifacts in an exploration of the ways and means individuals and cultures preserve memory. It purposefully draws broadly across the library's different divisions, including, but not only, prints and photographs, manuscripts, geography and maps, recorded sound, moving image, the Asian division, African and Middle Eastern division, Latin America, and European divisions. Within the broader theme of collecting memories, the gallery casework is subdivided into 8 sub-themes. One of them is memorialization and commemoration, and that brings us to this evening's conversation. In this exhibit section, the narrative addresses how memorials are public expressions of values belonging to the cultures that made them, from hallowed places to memorialized items. This guided the curatorial team when selecting objects from the library's collections. From the contents of Abraham Lincoln's pockets the night he was shot, and the draft of the Gettysburg Address Lincoln had with him when delivering the speech, to Ambro and tintype images of Civil War soldiers, to a sewing machine used to sew a part of the AIDS Memorial quilt, to a design competition entry in 1981 for a Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Maya Lin interprets the natural world through science, history, and culture to create works that have had a profound impact on how we view our history and how we relate to the natural world. From her very first work, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, she has since gone on to a remarkable and highly acclaimed career in both art and architecture, while still being committed to memory works that focus on some of the critical historical issues of our time. Lin has been recognized around the world for her distinct aesthetic vision with groundbreaking site-specific art installations, such as Ghost Forest at Madison Square Park, to award-winning architectural projects from the library at Smith College to Novartis's campus headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Currently, projects include the new Performing Arts Lab space for Bard College and the new design for the Museum of Chinese in America for downtown Manhattan. She's deeply committed to sustainable and site-sensitive design methods in all her projects. Her work asks the viewer to reconsider the nature and the environment at a time when it is crucial to do so. A committed environmentalist, she is at work on her final memorial, What is Missing? A cross-platform global memorial to the planet, calling attention to the crisis surrounding biodiversity and habitat loss. Lynn is a member of the Bloomberg Foundation, the What is Missing Foundation, and she is a National Geographic Explorer at Large. In 2016, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama, the nation's highest civilian award. Please join me in greeting the 14th Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden, and Maya Lin.
Talk about whatever you want.
Well, there are wonderful perks being the Librarian of Congress, as you can imagine. But sometimes they're the perks that are just pinch me moments. And one is being with you because I've followed your work, and I was just at Bard College. And it was graduation, so they were happy about that. But what they were really proud of was that you were designing something for their campus, and that that as a woman, an acclaimed artist, just architect, it was just something.
Thank you.
And so it's an honor for me to be with you because, as you can see, we could have loaded some more books up here. These are just a few, and this was your very first book, and that you have gone on from being introduced to the world, basically, and one of the most beloved memorials here in Washington, D.C. and around the world, but to such a distinguished career. How has that been for you? I mean, take away the memorial. If you took away the memorial, I know that's hard to imagine, but if you took that away, you would be such an acclaimed person.
It's been a funny life. I always see it as a tripod, that I couldn't make a choice between the art, the architecture, and the memorials. But I also got my start right here in Washington with a memorial, but my parents were teachers. And I've always felt, I call the works memory works, and there'll be 5 in the series, ending with the environment. So if the first one, Vietnam Memorial, deals with war, civil rights, Southern Poverty Law Center, the Women's Table at Yale, the Confluence Project, which is making people aware of the Native American deeper cultural ties in the Pacific Northwest at the 200th anniversary of Lewis and Clark. I think I'm following in my parents' teachings, and that I believe if we looked accurately at our history, perhaps and truthfully, it'll teach us, it'll frame a different future. I mean, and missing is very much a part of that, but for the first time, I'm not just presenting facts. I'm actually being prescriptive in things individuals can do, as well as an artist, can I think about the issues between climate change and biodiversity loss in kind of out of the box, at times funny ways, trying to get us to think about the dire consequences of climate change in a way that might get you to rethink what you're thinking. But it comes back to kind of, as an artist, you're finding your voice. And I had no idea what made me enter a competition. And kind of, you could say the rest is history. But again, I had to find my voice, and my voice has always been between the art and the architecture, and the memorials have always been that kind of wonderful balance, because they have a functionality, memorials, but their functionality is purely symbolic. So they're very conceptual at the same times, but they still have a function. You are working to help people, I think, learn and reflect on their history, and also to feel that history and feel that time, that loss. Anyway, sorry, I went on and on.
No. They want you to run on. Thing. I saw a few people while I was going on. They were like, "Would you stop?" Okay, we want to hear her. Reflection, the water going through, being part of reflective. How does that work?
Couple things. I think we all kind of, where we grow up has a profound impact, I think, at times on who we are. I grew up in a deeply wooded area in Athens, Ohio, and there were 2 streams that would flood, and my brother and I would just run out there, and we played in the water like any time we could. That, and I also think it's kind of interesting, I'm a bit of a science nerd, water exists in all 3 states, solid, liquid, and vapor. And if I think of my life as a bit of a tripod, art, architecture with the memorials, I don't know, I connected to this material element that is perpetually in a different state of flux a little bit. And I think for Civil Rights Memorial, everyone thinks a fountain is going to be this effervescent, powerful thing. And the goal with that and the water tables is to slow the water down so much that it looks still and reflective until you touch it, and then you're affecting change on the piece. So you become an interactive part of the piece. So I would say that a lot of my works are very empathetic and very personal. So if you take it back to the Vietnam Memorial, and I love the fact that I'm in the Library of Congress. It's a book.
It's a book.
It's a book. If you open it up, and the apex is where the end of the war meets the beginning of the war, 59 to 75. All the panels on the right hand, well, if you look at it, the left-hand side, rag left. All the panels on the right-hand side, rag right. Guess what the size of the text is on the wall? Can anyone guess? 1/2 inch. Never been done. They were like, literally, you can't do it. But if you didn't, the wall would hit the Lincoln Memorial. And it's a book put out in public view. So if you think of monumental architecture, the size of text, it's huge. So when you read it, you're going to read it like a billboard. Now, when you read something like a billboard, you're already distanced from it. Pick up a book and read it. You read it one-on-one. So it begins to be a very, aside from the fact that you also see yourself reflected in the names, and the names kind of rise up. It's not like you descend. There's a lot of what you would call psychological responses with that piece, of which I was a Greek mythology nut. So it's Orpheus descending. And you go down, it gets quieter. The noise of the city is quieted. You see yourself reflected. You come to the apex where the beginning and end of the war meet, broken by the earth. So again, that symbolic idea that we can't, that is their world reflected. It's through a mirror darkly. You have to turn around in the light and walk back out. So there's a passage and a journey to an awareness about loss. And the key critical point about it as well, design-wise, was the names had to be listed chronologically. And that was my biggest design battle. There were two, and the MIAs wanted to be separated out, and again, alphabetical. And I had to bring out like a phone book, and then I had to say how many Smiths are on the wall. So by making it a timeline, and this is a war where people served in a very short time period, so if you knew someone who died, you would find on 3 panels, basically, your time. So that's how it becomes as much your time as theirs. But again, you still have to turn around and walk back to the light. And you can't reach that reflected world, which is, again, I was thinking of Orpheus and Eurydice a little bit. Don't turn around, sorry. Anyway, that's sort of how that piece got sort of thought out
And
through.
when you mentioned the Southern Poverty
Yeah.
Center, you did research, though, and put those words.
I did. My first flight down, I was given Eyes on the Prize and a couple other books, and I came across Martin Luther King quoting from the Book of Amos, "We are not satisfied, we shall not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters." So let's assume the Vietnam Memorial is a closed timeline. But when I was asked by the Southern Poverty Law Center to design the memorial to civil rights, I knew, well, there's a civil rights era, but the work is ongoing. So in that one, it's a broken timeline signifying we can capture a moment in time. I came across that passage as I was about to land for the first time in Montgomery, and I knew the piece would be about water. I don't know, some things just it's the same way with the Vietnam Memorial. It's a longer story. It's probably written about ad nauseum. I had actually designed a memorial to World War III for my class project before it, and the professor didn't like it that much. It was a little dark, a little sharp, a little painful, a little hopeless, and there was no reason or rhyme to it. He was actually very upset with me. And he goes, if I had a brother who died in that war, I would never want to go there. And I went, Andy, it's World War III. We're not going to be here. This is like, so I had a very different idea of what I was maybe trying to convey in a way. Civil rights, I did not choose the names. I merely said, this is a people's movement. It's cause and effect. Sometimes a riot led to someone's death, but then led to better legislation. Sometimes legislation led to riot. And so by looking at these moments in time where people were murdered, and also intertwining it with key legislative moments, you see how it was a people's movement, and you see how one person's actions, from Rosa Essman to Emmett Till, changed history. So I think every time you start to choose facts and present them, it's kind of amazing. No history is truly objective, but you try to present a truth that you think people are going to then start thinking. And like for civil rights, it's like, I can only barely touch the surface, and I'm hoping, because I wasn't taught this history when I was in school. It was going on. It was, and at the time, I think it wasn't really in the curriculums that much. So if we can't even remember it, how can we learn from it? So again, that one became a telling of a brief history, hoping you'll get more interested. Women's Table at Yale was different. It was, they called up and said, commemoration of women at Yale. Yale's been co-ed for 20 years, which sort of surprised me because I came in like 4 or 5 years after it had gone co-ed. It looked pretty normal to me. It was like almost 50-50. So again, I didn't even realize how, but I couldn't just look at that. So I started reading. I always read. For the memorials, I read and read and read. And then I put it all away and I kind of wait. Each time it's a little different. And I came across a book, Women at Yale, and it said there were always women who sat in on classes, and one of the books called them silent listeners. And it was like, I'm just going to count them. Let's count them, because it was a very tough quota system. When they first admitted women at Yale, they said, well, we still have to graduate 1,000 Yale men. So there were like 10 women. It was very contentious. So I figured the whole piece would be about numbers. And we ended up, the Yale statistics department worked on going back in time till when there were no women, and the first class of Yale that admitted women was the School of the Art, 13. So it begins with zeros coming out of the water table, and then it counts the number of women enrolled at Yale till the day I put the piece in. We actually inscribed the last date afterwards for that year, and it's a spiral. So again, that timeline is neither closed or slightly, it's an open end, because of course I can mark a beginning, but hopefully there's no end to the women at Yale. And you begin to see how just counting the numbers during the 2 world wars, the numbers increase because the men had gone off to war. There is a footnote, again, since we're in a library. It's the only artwork of mine that has an asterisk and a footnote, because the Yale Law School didn't want to admit they were admitting women, so they initialed them. So there is a statistical accounting on the footnote on the back of the sculpture that says, this is an approximation. We took all the initialed students and we extrapolated a guess as to how many would have been women. Anyway, sorry. The footnote, I mean, I don't get to do footnotes much in monumental work, so there you go.
Yeah. Well, you did do, though, the reading garden.
I did do the reading garden, which I collaborated on with my brother. My brother is a language poet, and I don't know if you know language poetry. They use words a little abstractly, sort of like an abstract painter would use paint. You can sense the meaning, but there's no narrative to it. So we've worked together on 3 separate tome poems where I figured, well, most of the time I find a form and then we put the text on it. With my brother in both 3 instances, I interacted, so he would write something, I would create a form, and back and forth, and they're all in Ohio. We're from Ohio because the site of a book it's a trilogy. So we did the Ohio Trilogy series. One is in Cleveland at the Cleveland Public Library. The second one is in our hometown in OU, Input. And I can tell you a little bit about that one. And then the third one was at Oberlin, and it's a poem through a parking lot and it's all about, that one's about birds and songs and bird songs and environment. The first one is almost an Alice in Wonderland child's poem writ large through the garden. It's called Reading a Garden. And at the center of it, the title of the piece is written backwards, and you see the title reflected in the water forwards. So it's a play, and there were a lot of dealing with playful mirror imaging, because it was a little bit of a nonsense poem that he wrote for that one. And then the middle one for OU, again, this is our hometown, so when do you get to do a piece that's actually very personal? And my first official connection with Ohio University was in high school. I took computer programming and I taught myself Fortran and COBOL. This ages me, right? I'm like, I was kind of a nerd, math, science, loved it. But I couldn't type. Women were still not allowed to do shop. We did home ec. I couldn't bake either. And they didn't teach typing anymore to girls, so I couldn't type. So I would literally sit in Clippinger Hall with punch cards, and you'd have to enter like 50
90
numbers, and I'd have a typo on the last number. So I made an artwork for them. If you go to Ohio University Input, I made a data punch card in concrete holes. Some are raised, some are lowered. My brother's poem is throughout, and it's his childhood memories. But again, childhood memories of a place are almost universal because there's things that we'll all connect to, and so that's called Input. So yeah, sometimes you get to do some. I love language. I always have.
Well, you did the library.
Oh, for Smith College. Yeah. Love that piece. It's also my mother's alma mater. She kind of got smuggled out of China on one of the last boats to leave. The nationalists and the communists were bombing Shanghai Harbor. And my grandfather had been an eye surgeon in Shanghai, and he had met colleagues in the States, and they said, if you can get Julia out, I'll get her a scholarship to Smith. And so she came. The nationalists were suspicious of young students. They thought they might be spies. She got held with her girlfriend, who was a classical pianist, on this little island, but a lieutenant took pity on them. They got there. She was 2 weeks late. She graduated from Smith in 1951, Gardner House. And so the library was, when I came to look at it, my mother sadly had passed away. You know how you have a building, and then you decide you're going to create the worst additions to it, and then you're going to get even worse, because that was the 70s edition, and then there was the 80s edition, and you're in the heart of an Olmsted campus, and you've now built the ugliest wall that has now and on top of that, we have to deliver books to the library, so now let's drive a driveway underneath part of the center of the campus. So it was actually a joy. Oh, wait, and now we don't have enough space, so let's put mezzanines in the library so that it's being John Malkovich. So when you entered the Grand Hall, you saw feet from It was, there are some sites as an architect you get that are so easy because it is so bad what you're fixing.
And librarians do just, we put things places.
Yes.
It's not always pretty. Not always pretty. But that, the Langston
Hughes
Library is
for,
a jewel.
Children's Defense Fund. Marion Wright Edelman had asked me to do first a library, and I fell in love with an old raised crib barn. Never seen one before. It's got corn crib type, raised up to load the grain. It's sort of raised up, and they were going to tear it down. I said, no, don't tear it down. It's beautiful. It's an old log cabin. So we slipped a modernist skin inside this barn. And down below, I left them a little water table, and in one side was the shop. In one of the cribs was the shop, the other one you entered, and it was a really sweet. I do work for and have had the fortune to work for some great not-for-profits, and I think it's nice. When I went through architecture school, I realized, you can go to business school, you can go to law school, you can go to architecture school. They all are about the same cost at that time, a little while ago. And you come out and you might not necessarily make more than a draftsman, $15 an hour. So I realized it might be a profession that is harder if you're like the first going to college. You're not gonna risk it. You're gonna go where maybe there's and so, I don't know, part of me has always felt, can we give design for limited budgets? Like, I think the first time I worked with the Museum of Chinese in America, I can't even tell you, it was like $50 a square foot. It's like proving that you can help design. Design doesn't always have to be for the very privileged. And I sort of believe in that.
Well, now, in your first book, you do have a house that
I do have a house
in there that you designed.
Oh, the Weber house.
Yes, I want to live in the house. Okay, it's like
So that's my first house.
Describe that. It was your first house.
And I was exploring an idea of making a roof that had an undulating curve. And it's a very Japanese style house and feel with a courtyard. And what's interesting is at times my art informs my architecture and my architecture informs my art, but I like to keep them very separate. But ironically, that curved roof form jumped right into the wave fields, which are these large earthen waves that I have created. Storm Kings was the largest. It's about 6 acres. It's an 11-acre site, but and so I think it's partly because I come from a very hilly region of southeastern Ohio. It is not Cleveland. It is not flat. It is beautifully hilly, and also within southeastern Ohio there was the presence of these ancient mounds, and one was in the shape of a serpent. So I got very involved. And third thing, my father was a ceramicist, so my brother and I spent all our time waiting for him to take us home in his studio. And so my medium was clay. And I'm still making many of my maquettes for the earthworks in this plasticine. It's an oil-based clay, so it doesn't dry out. And so these are all things. So the irony is my first house jumps and becomes my first wave field. And so there's always a kind of a back and forth between what I'm doing. The greatest fear was that if I chose to pursue the art and the architecture separately, would I be schizophrenic? I don't know, you tell me. Because you don't know what you're doing when you're finding your voice. And I think way back when, I think there was less of a discussion of interdisciplinary. And so I was pretty much told in grad school, you can't do both, art and architecture. You're going to have to make a choice. I wasn't choosing, they were choosing me. It's funny, I just love both because they're incredibly different. They tap into very different parts of creativity. And again, you've got to understand, I was like casting bronzes because my dad was Dean of Fine Arts in high school, but I was also teaching myself Cobalt and Fortran. So I'm a total nerd, but I'm also kind of making things. I'm thinking through my hands. And that's that left side, right side of the brain, which is how I am wired. So I couldn't make the choice, and it took longer then to build up kind of a body of work, also being pegged as, she's the girl that did the memorial. And that's a big one. Yeah.
Has that been because when you have early recognition and success, to have that always be the starting point for people where they almost miss out on the depth and the breadth of your work. And
you get discovered every single time. Like, oh wow, and then they write an article and it's like, and then the next one comes out, you get discovered again. I think it's so beloved. That memorial is so beloved. And I think the story is an unusual one. I was 21, 22. And so it's a great story. I often played a game in my head when it happened. Well, I'll just pretend I'm going to reverse my career in my brain and start with my last and end with that one, just to play with it. In the end, I think about 10, 15 years ago, I started to realize when the wave fields were emerging that I knew I was doing something so important for me as an artist, because I think a lot of this is about finding your voice. Now, the architecture took longer because, again, I do one work of architecture at a time, because I cannot continue to do my art if I became an office. I'm not. I'm Mylan Studio, and I have a very small practice. I have 3 people, maybe 4, and then I have 1 person working on what is missing for me. That's it. I don't delegate. If you get me down to the doorknobs, whether you like it or not. And so
that'd be nice.
I'm just, and I'm a little bit, I love making things. I'm still making the models at times, not as much as I used to, but I kind of love the making. And I love the idea that sometimes you do think through your hands. It's weird. It's like you wake up one morning, like Yale was very cute. They'd call up like every 6 months. Have you figured it? No, haven't figured it out yet. And then one morning I woke up and I made what would be the women's table. So it's like, but I kind of let it percolate until the form finds me a little bit. I don't like, in art, I don't like deadlines because I don't want to think, oh, I forced that idea out for an artificial deadline. So I try to tell clients, because a lot of the artworks are commissioned, give me the time. It just takes me time to percolate. Architecture is slightly different. Nobody's going to give you that. It's like functionality is everything. But you're also making works. And it's not that architecture isn't a work of art. It isn't just as hard. It could be harder for some. It's just that you are definitely making something for someone else. And that's the joy of that art. The art of architecture is about, in a way, a lot of constraints at times, and you rise through that art for it. I also have said, again, the book analogy, a broken record here, creating art for me is like writing a poem, abstract, of course. Making a work of architecture is writing a novel. And you have to cross your T's, dot your I's. Every sentence has to fit. And I do think there's a real correlation between, there's a really different impulse in kind of writing a poem. It has to be so raw and so pure in a way, and so spare, at least. And a novel has to be chapter, it's composed very, very differently.
So you have the body of work now, and you found your voice, right?
Oh, I'm always finding my voice.
Okay.
I think it's,
melding.
it's literally, I think the last 10 years, I think between Novartis coming out and Smith College and Bard, it took longer to really find that voice in architecture. The art came a little bit sooner because I've been making more, but again, Novartis took 7 years. It was the entire headquarters master plan in Cambridge, Mass, and then I took the lead on the front building. And I couldn't talk about it for the first 4 because they had to get the permission and they had to get it through Cambridge City Planning. So so to go dark for like 4 years, can't tell you what I'm working on. It was insane, but it was great to do. And then when I finished that is when I took on Smith. Because again, one architectural project at a time.
One at a time. Well, before we open it up, we have time for questions. And your project now is What is Missing, and it says that it's your final memorial.
5th and last, but I'll be donating to it for the rest of my life.
Okay.
It is a labor of love. I started it with an idea. If I could do anything with my background to help reflect on the massive, we're in the 6th extinction of the planet, we're causing it. And a key fact is 50% of all emissions is caused by habitat degradation loss, agriculture, ranching, and it's the main driver of species loss. So you have an opportunity. We can save 2 birds with 1 tree if we restore and protect and our grasslands, our wetlands, our forests, and equally important, we reform our agriculture and ranching and aquaculture. So that could, I'll give you a couple of numbers, because what do I do as an artist through this wacky project of mine? We collect memories online. We're building an ecological map of memory. Please give us a memory. Go to whatismissing.org. Share a memory, something you or something your parents or your grandparents have told you is missing from the natural world or has come back. How does nature affect you personally? Take it back a generation or 2. It's called shifting baselines. We don't realize that a cod in 1895 was bigger than a man. We don't realize, because we know what we know. We know a cod's about this big, right? Bigger than a man. Why do you think the earlier prints came over? Some of them were chasing the cod. So one, I'm trying to get you aware of what great abundance there was. We trace deep 200-point timelines of rivers, cities, species. There's always an arc, though. First, we choose to live by a place because there was great biodiversity and abundance. We pollute it with sewage. We pollute it with industry. We go, what are we doing? We protect it with legislation. The Thames has never been cleaner than for the last 400 years. Seals are back, whales are back, oysters are coming back in Manhattan. So nature's resilient. If we protect it, it will come back. So there's the big difference between that memorial and the others is I also have things you can all do. So here's one, but I still don't want to preach, so I'll ask a question. What if we all ate 20% less meat? We could free up enough land that's equivalent to all the protected land in North America and 50% of the protected land in South America. At Easter, I can't resist. I send a picture of a really cute rabbit out, because you have to have a sense of humor. I believe we're out to kind of get people to rethink the problem, right? So what does a rabbit have in common with the Mississippi River? If we all substituted rabbit meat for cow, we could save enough water equivalent to what used to flow, the Mississippi slowing down, as flowed over the Mississippi River every year, and we could free up 90% of our land. So again, I'm not going to say don't eat meat. I'm just saying reflect back on what you're doing. It's also, I went to Davos last year, and there was a 3-minute talk. I'm one of the 3 artists they had asked. I was the opening act for Renee Fleming and Idris Elba. It's like, oh my God.
Oh my.
What can I do? And I kind of was like, oh. So I got up and I said, well, according to all of you, it would take 1.6 trillion to mitigate climate change annually. By the way, that's what we spend on alcohol. And then I go on to say nature-based solutions, broken record, nature-based solutions, what it would cost to do that is what we spend on tobacco. We're having the biggest party on the planet, and we're doing it at our kids' expense, their kids, and every other species. I'm not saying don't have that drink. It's cocktail time, by the way. But buy 3 more drinks for the planet. So maybe as an artist, I can get us to kind of laugh at ourselves a little bit and go, really? This is what we're doing? And so just thinking outside of the box a little bit.
But I don't eat the rabbit either. Okay, I don't want to substitute. I had a pet rabbit, you know, so it's a little touchy for me. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's share you with people. I think we have some microphones.
Mic's coming. Is this on?
This is my Oprah
Hello, hello.
All right.
Hello, hello. There we go.
First of all, I love your work.
Thank you.
I have always loved your work. And I used to bring our children to the Vietnam Memorial when it was under construction, and we lived in Foggy Bottom. And they grew up with it.
Crystal Bridges. Yeah. So my sculptures that I call my studio sculptures, which are what you're referring to, a lot of them deal with environmental, making people aware of what's literally right outside your front door. So for Crystal Bridges, I chose the Upper White River, which flows right through where Crystal, so I will choose a river of note that is like I did folding the Chesapeake at the Renwick, because out the window and it went all over the walls in marbles. Silver, I use recycled silver sometimes because when the early Europeans came to this country, and again, they were met by incredible abundance of species. People looked at the menhaden, the moss bunkers in the rivers on the East Coast, and the silver light reflecting off the back, they termed it running silver. So I do make out of recycled silver sometimes waterways because, again, if you think about it, we know our point on the river. We're never thinking of what's downstream from us, and we might only be worried about what's upstream from us if someone's polluting. So I try to present a river as a complete whole ecosystem. I'm obsessed with watersheds. I'm obsessed with rivers. It's water's life. And I think right now we're in a kind of a crisis with water issues. And so I try to kind of through the artwork, even they're really kind of beautiful, but they are beautiful and they're really precious. So I wanted to deliberately choose a material that both talks about kind of that quote, running silver, as well as their incredibly vital, beautiful, fragile ecosystems.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other.
Thank you for being here. So actually, I went to University of Michigan and studied naval architecture and marine engineering, so shout out to the Wade Field. That's my building, actually, next to it. So the Wall That Heals, which is the traveling exhibit of the Vietnam War Memorial replica traveling. Did you have any consultation or anything to deal with how they were able to put that together?
No, and I think there's 2 or 3 of them. To be honest, it was such a battle to get the thing done. I didn't really think about anything else. So I didn't copyright the piece. The first one came out and it was done by veterans who basically said, I can't afford to travel, and it was a good idea. A couple of them, I think, have much more maybe commercial purposes, which I would say is not such a good idea, but I'm not involved in it. They don't consult me. My attitude is, part of me felt if indeed they can't afford to travel, then it's a good thing. It's a half-scale piece, so you'll never get the impact of it, but at the same time, I could understand why they wanted to bring it. And in that sense, it's a little bit of a tribute, but if they're kind of, it's commercial, I don't buy into that either. So, I'm just a little, I think you have to be very respectful of when you're dealing with loss of other people's losses. And I think that gets down to, as long as the intention is good, then it's an okay thing.
I had the opportunity of seeing the Civil Rights Memorial. I didn't actually know you were affiliated with it until today, but I just wanted to tell you how moving it really was. And I can still remember it, even though I've seen it just so many years ago. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we have time for maybe one more question, if there's any.
One more question or comment.
So, at the risk of sounding like I'm trying to discover you, can you talk a little bit about young you receiving the commission to do the Vietnam Memorial? And
The young me?
the younger you, forgive me. You're still the young you.
The way younger me. I was like 5, right, when I did it. It's a weird one. It's hard to talk about. I think I came to Washington and I am someone who, and maybe it's the Asian part of me, I never thought, well, just because I was chosen, I looked at competitions, it's like, it doesn't mean it's gonna get built. I fought like hell. I was extremely young, and maybe I should have been scared when I knew people like H. Ross Perot were doing what they were doing and bankrolling the opposition, and there were even rumors that he tried to get third and first. Not him, I can't say that. It wasn't pleasant, and I don't think it occurred to me that it wasn't pleasant because I believed in it as only a young person can, like you guys are all idiots. I am right. I never questioned, I never had doubts that it would work because I think youth protects you because you know you're right. And I think if I had done it now, I don't know if I could have gotten through that firestorm because I would have actually been aware of the firestorm. There is a side of me that is and has always been incredibly naive and one could say maybe a little odd that, I've encountered racism and being made fun of, but I never realized that was what was happening. And it's kind of protected me. And I remember the very first press conference when a reporter said, "Well, don't you think it's a little ironic that this is a memorial to the Vietnam War and you're of Asian descent?" And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, "That is irrelevant, sir." And I'm like an academic kid. I'm like, what matters is up here. It took me 9 months to ask the veterans, has my race been an issue? And they literally, I think they looked down at their feet and they didn't want to tell me. I mean, of course my race was an issue. It was like, how dare you let a gook design the memorial? It was, but again, I'm in a bit of I don't know if it's an academic bubble or just a little bit of a spectrum bubble. One never knows. You could ask my brother about that. But definitely it protected me. So I just was hell-bent, driven as an artist. Like the architect of record were like, literally we had just gotten approval for the stone, black, reflective granite. And I remember they turned to me in the back seat and said, they said two things. It was so funny. It's like, this is what they said. Well, because I literally just got the shiny black granite approved, which was what I wanted. And they said, don't get me wrong, but I think you're making a mistake. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be too feminine. And I was like, that didn't bother me. But then afterwards, I was fuming. I was like practically in tears in the back seat because I had just found out that the MIAs wanted to separate themselves out from the chronology. And I knew that they would lose their moment. Their power was, it's when a family gets the letter saying your son or daughter is missing, that's the emotional tie. So I was preparing for the next battle. And the other architect turned to me and said, like, what planet are you from? You just got approval. It's like one of the hardest approvals. I said, I've got to work on everyone has to be in the same timeline to make this thing. So I was extremely obsessive, which I still might be, fair warning. But no, I think you just believed, because as an artist, I think you have a certain, I don't know, obsessive quality.
And we're glad that you were protected. Because now, from that experience, we have all the work you've done and more to come.
Well, I can't wait to go look at the treasures. I
Well,
think
there you go.
Let's go take a walk.
And
I
thank
haven't seen
all
it
of
yet.
you for also